Doreen Granpeesheh is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen.
My 3-year-old is non-speaking, diagnosed autism. We've started ABA, but he has constant diarrhea, which interrupts therapy. I hear you talking about diet, but when I asked my BCBA about starting the gluten-free diet, he told me there's no science behind it. Now I'm confused. Should we try the diet? Am I with a bad ABA provider?
Oh my gosh, what a great question. So, and what a difficult last part of that question to answer. You know, your ABA provider could be really good at ABA. I don't know because I've not observed. I really don't know. It's possible that they're a good ABA provider. But the problem that I have with a lot of ABA providers is that they don't educate themselves on other things, and then they tell parents incorrect advice, okay? There is a lot of science behind both gluten, casein, corn, soy. A lot of our kids have different allergies. And let me tell you, my friends, if there wasn't science behind it, do you really think that you could go out to most restaurants nowadays and get gluten-free foods? No. Obviously, this has grown over the last decade or so because there is science behind it. And I mean, it's very well supported. And it's not just gluten, casein, corn, soy, and food dyes and other things. It's important, actually, to identify what it is for your child. I mean, these days, we're so lucky, Shannon. I remember like 15 years ago with the movement. I don't know if you remember, they were called Andy. Do you remember the group that would do that? They were... But it's very easy now. You can get a food sensitivity kit sent to you at home, and you can check your child's food sensitivity. You can also go and get an organic acids metabolites test. There's lots of different ways to determine what foods your child is allergic to or is not able to break down. The reason that most people do gluten and casein is that studies had shown that the vast majority of people, not just individuals with autism, are allergic to those two products. Casein, which is the protein in dairy, and gluten, which is the protein in whole grains. So, you know, it's important to be able to identify. This is why I always do my lectures on treat the whole child, the whole child, because you know, ABA is just intensive tutoring, intensive teaching. And if you start to do a lot of intensive work with a child who's not otherwise feeling well, it's just not right? I mean, like some days I am not feeling well. And if those days I was supposed to learn a bunch of new stuff, I'd be pretty frustrated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to say that one of the things that I think is significant about what this parent wrote in and said is that, you know, we've started ABA, but our child is having constant diarrhea.
Yeah. And this is like, I'm so glad that the parent wrote in, because you should never ignore these signs that something is wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I've told you that I will never forget that I was doing an intake for a family, and I asked them questions for about 2 hours. And at the end of the intake, I said, is there anything else? And they said, well, yeah, he has diarrhea. And I said, like, oh, how often? Every day.
Yeah.
And that is a very clear sign that there's something going on in the gastrointestinal system. It could be a variety of things.
Yeah.
And you need to deal with that, because obviously it's uncomfortable and unhealthy for anyone to have diarrhea every day.
And I will say that I am aware of a lot of families that have gone on the gluten-free, casein-free diet as an example. As you said, it's more important that you figure out what's right for your individual child. I will say that a lot of people jump to the gluten-free, casein-free one first because it's a little bit easier than some of the other diets, and because so many people have said that their child made improvement. But there are families that do the gluten-free, casein-free, and they don't see a bang for their buck, so to speak, for that. So it isn't a one-size-fits-all. But I know that for us, it made great sense because I have an allergy to wheat. And so when they explained the gluten thing, I was like, oh, well then perhaps this is the way to go. And I was allergic to milk as a child. I'm allergic to milk again. I don't like that. It's a terrible thing. But so it made sense. And for our child, he began to speak when we eliminated these things. He began to speak again. He had been speaking, stopped, and began to speak again. But here's the important thing. I think all the time about what would have happened if we had just started ABA without having done something, because he was a kid who had diarrhea. I don't think he would have gotten as much out of ABA because he would have been dealing with how he felt. He wouldn't have had the focus. He couldn't have learned the things he did. But on the other side, I meet families who are all about the biomedical, all about the diet, and they're like, I'm not doing ABA. And I'm like, I always say that for us, getting him healthy is what made it possible for him to benefit from the ABA.
For sure.
But the skills that he learned was from ABA. He did not learn skills from a diet.
Right.
He did not grow his education and his language from a diet. It made it possible for him to learn.
That's right. And you know, it really is about, I mean, you have to really look at ABA as just being the modality to teach the things that the child has not learned, right? And depending on the age of the child, when you're able to finally stabilize medically, you're usually behind. And you need that ABA to try to catch your child up. And, you know, by the way, I do want to say that if you decide to try a diet, I highly recommend that you eliminate one item at a time. A lot of times parents will just jump in and get rid of casein, gluten, corn, soy, everything, because that's what they've heard. And you'll never know which one it is, right? And it's important, and it makes it so much harder if you eliminate everything at the same time. I recommend you start with casein. You usually see the effect of that within a week or so. And then you can start gluten, and you will see another effect with gluten probably 2 weeks after that. And then you can start to eliminate things. But hey, as I said, if you get a food sensitivity test, you'll be able to know right off the bat. And sometimes you'll be surprised at the things that your child is actually sensitive to.
It is amazing. We have to take a pause because we have a very important message for you guys. We've been talking about this here on the show. I want you to take a look at this because I want to encourage, if you qualify, I really want to encourage you to call the number that you're going to see in this next message. Take a look at this.
If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.
Don't forget, you can watch Ask Dr. Doreen live every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific time on autismnetwork.com. We hope to see you.